Now we are yours. Human gets two beautiful alien wives. Ethan Simpson stood still, feeling his heart pound as the massive airlock door slid open before him. The hallway that revealed itself was a gleaming crystal path, its surface reflecting the soft glow of alien lights. Ethan took a deep breath, his polished diplomat's uniform tight against his skin. This was it. His life, and perhaps the fate of humanity, was about to change forever. He walked cautiously, the metallic sound of his boots echoing off the translucent walls. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the gravity of what lay ahead tried to pull him down. The Tholian race, an enigmatic crystalline species known for their advanced technology and strange customs, had agreed to an unprecedented alliance with Earth. This diplomatic effort was supposed to prevent an all-out war between the two species, but the cost was steep, and Ethan was the price. An arranged marriage between him and two Tholian females was intended to seal the bond between the two worlds. A sense of uncertainty gripped Ethan as he reached the towering rose quartz doors at the end of the hall. They slid open silently, revealing a grand chamber bathed in a soft magenta glow. Inside stood his two new brides, Kar and Vesa. Kar was tall, poised, and elegant, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the gentle light like diamonds set against a backdrop of shimmering white robes. Her expression was calm, her movements deliberate, exuding an aura of wisdom. She was the essence of tradition, a perfect representative of Tholian society's grace and structure. Beside her was Vesa, a striking contrast to Kar's serenity. Dressed in form-fitting black flight gear, her every movement seemed calculated and fierce. Her eyes glimmered with intelligence and fire, hinting at a rebellious spirit just beneath the surface. Vesa's stance suggested that she was not just a wife, but a warrior, one who wouldn't be easily tamed by either custom or man. Ethan felt their eyes on him as he stepped forward. Two wives, one human husband, a bridge between worlds. The union was more than just a symbolic gesture. It carried the weight of hope, diplomacy, and potential betrayal. For the sake of peace, Ethan had sacrificed his freedom. But deep down, he wondered, was this alliance truly for the benefit of both species, or were there darker, hidden motives at play? Kar took a graceful step forward, her voice soft and melodic. "Welcome, Ethan Simpson. Today marks a new chapter for both our peoples." Vesa gave a slight nod, her eyes narrowing as if trying to read Ethan's soul. "We may be bound by duty, but I expect we will find our own path through this arrangement." Ethan nodded. "I am honored to be here, and I will do everything in my power to ensure this alliance succeeds." His words were formal, carefully chosen to reflect his role as a diplomat. But inside, he felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on him. Kar and Vesa exchanged a glance. It was subtle, but Ethan caught it, a shared understanding, perhaps even a hint of amusement. These were not ordinary brides. They were leaders, warriors, and diplomats in their own right. And in this delicate balance of power, Ethan realized he would have to navigate carefully if he hoped to survive, both politically and personally. As the ceremony progressed, Ethan began to understand the complexity of the situation. Kar represented the traditional Tholian government, steeped in ancient customs and rigid hierarchies. Vesa, on the other hand, seemed to embody a growing resistance movement within Tholian society, one that sought change, perhaps even rebellion against the status quo. Despite their differences, the two women were united in their purpose. And now, they were united with Ethan, bound by a marriage that was meant to prevent a war. But as they stood together, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much larger conflict, one that went beyond just the two of them. The whispers of conspiracy, of hidden agendas, lingered in the background of their every conversation. While Kar and Vesa carried themselves with grace and confidence, Ethan sensed that they, too, were wary of what the future held. The reception that followed was grand, filled with glittering lights and delicate crystalline structures. Tholian dignitaries and military leaders mingled, their multifaceted eyes watching the trio closely. Ethan felt like a fish in a glass tank, exposed and vulnerable. Every word, every gesture was being analyzed. There were those among the Tholians who resented the alliance, who saw humanity as a lesser species unworthy of such an arrangement. Ethan's thoughts were interrupted by the presence of a towering Tholian male. Ambassador Zorax loomed over him, his crystalline features sharp and imposing. "So," Zorax rumbled, his voice low and filled with disdain, "this is the human they've chosen to tie our people to." Ethan held his ground, though his heart raced. "I am here to honor this alliance, Ambassador, for the benefit of both our species." Zorax's multifaceted eyes glinted with something dark. "We shall see if your kind is truly worthy." His words hung in the air like a threat. As the evening drew to a close, Ethan found himself standing alone on a balcony, looking out over the vast crystalline city of Axar Prime. The stars twinkled overhead, casting a soft glow on the alien landscape. Carr and Vesa were inside, speaking with various dignitaries. Ethan's thoughts swirled with uncertainty. He was not just a husband in this strange union. He was a pawn in a much larger game, one that could decide the fate of not just his world, but the entire galaxy. But as he looked out over the city, a determination began to rise within him. He would not simply be a passive participant in this alliance. He would find a way to uncover the truth, to ensure that the future of both their peoples was one of peace, not domination. And as the night grew darker, Ethan vowed to himself that no matter what lay ahead, he would fight for that future with everything he had. Ethan's heart was still pounding from the intense first meeting with his alien brides, Carr and Vesa. The weight of his responsibility pressed down on him. Though he was chosen to be the symbol of peace between humanity and the Tholian race, the path ahead was far from clear. Their marriage wasn't just a union of two vastly different species, but the cornerstone of a delicate peace treaty. Ethan knew he was caught in a political storm, but his connection with Carr and Vesa could be the key to navigating this alien world. The first night they spent together was awkward, with all three of them unsure of what to say or do. Ethan tried to start a conversation, but Carr's eyes remained distant, reflecting her own silent thoughts, while Vesa's gaze stayed sharp, watching every move as if ready to spring into action at the slightest hint of danger. As days passed, Ethan realized that the cultural gap between them was wider than he had ever imagined. The Tholians' crystalline cities shimmered under the twin suns of Axar Prime, their spires stretching high into the lavender skies. Everything felt different here. The smells, the light, the way the air hummed with energy. Even basic communication with Carr and Vesa required patience and understanding, as their way of thinking was deeply shaped by their crystalline biology and the unique social structures of their people. Carr, with her elegance and grace, took it upon herself to educate Ethan about Tholian customs. She explained the significance of certain gestures, colors, and sounds that filled their world. For instance, when the lights in their chamber dimmed to a soft purple, it indicated a time of reflection and meditation in Tholian culture. Ethan tried his best to adapt, though he often felt like a fish out of water. Meanwhile, Vesa was less interested in traditions and more focused on strategy. Her mind was sharp, always calculating. She seemed to take her role as a protector seriously, always watching Ethan's back and ensuring that he was safe. However, there was an undeniable tension between them. She didn't fully trust him yet, nor did she believe that their union would be enough to hold their people together. Despite this, Ethan could see flashes of vulnerability in Vesa, moments where her hardened exterior cracked just enough for him to catch a glimpse of the woman behind the warrior. As Ethan settled into his new life, strange rumors began to surface. He overheard snippets of conversations between Tholian officials, whispers of a secret project that threatened to destabilize everything. The name Project Assimilation came up more than once, sending chills down his spine. From what little he gathered, the project was more than just a defense initiative. It was a plan to consolidate power and potentially subjugate humanity under Tholian rule. Determined to uncover the truth, Ethan turned to his two wives for help. He approached Carr first, hoping her connections in the Tholian government could provide some insight. But Carr hesitated, her eyes shimmering with a mix of concern and caution. She explained that the inner workings of the government were often shrouded in secrecy, even from high-ranking officials like herself. Still, she promised to look into it. Vesa, on the other hand, was more skeptical. She warned Ethan not to dig too deeply, fearing that their fragile union could be jeopardized if they drew too much attention. But Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. He had to find out more, even if it meant putting himself at risk. As the days turned into weeks, the dynamic between Ethan, Carr, and Vesa began to shift. They still had their differences, but the initial awkwardness was fading. Little by little, they started to open up to one another. One evening, while gazing out at the endless crystalline landscape from their private chambers, Ethan shared stories of Earth, of its oceans, its forests, and the vibrant cultures that spanned the planet. Both Carr and Vesa listened intently, their multifaceted eyes reflecting the soft glow of the alien sunset. In return, Carr spoke of the Tholians' deep connection to the crystals that made up their cities and their very bodies. She described how each Tholian was bonded to a particular type of crystal at birth, which shaped their identity and purpose within their society. For Carr, the delicate rose quartz that adorned her wrists and temples symbolized her role as a diplomat and nurturer. Vesa, however, was bonded to onyx, a rare and powerful crystal associated with warriors and protectors. She revealed that her bond to onyx was not something she had chosen, but rather a result of her upbringing in the military caste. The weight of that responsibility had shaped her into the person she was today, strong, vigilant, and always ready to fight. Despite their vastly different upbringings, Ethan could see a growing connection between the three of them. Carr's gentle wisdom balanced Vesa's fierce determination, and Ethan found himself relying on both of them in different ways. He knew that if they were to succeed in their mission, to unite their peoples and prevent war, they would have to trust each other completely. Just as things seemed to be settling into a fragile routine, Ethan received an unexpected message from the Tholian Council. They were summoned to attend a high-profile event at the Crystalline Palace, where Ethan would have to present himself as a symbol of unity between humanity and the Tholians. The pressure weighed heavily on him, knowing that their every move would be scrutinized by both their allies and enemies. But there was more to the event than just politics. Ethan had learned enough by now to sense the underlying tensions simmering beneath the surface. The whispers of conspiracy were growing louder, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the true test of their alliance was yet to come. As the trio prepared for the grand event, a sense of unease settled over them. The stakes were higher than ever, and with the shadow of Project Assimilation looming in the background, Ethan knew that their next steps could determine the fate of both their peoples. The journey had only just begun, and the future was more uncertain than ever. But Ethan was no longer alone. He had his wives by his side, and together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The Crystalline Palace was a marvel to behold. The spires of translucent crystal reached into the sky, shimmering in iridescent hues that shifted with every passing moment. Light danced through the structure, casting intricate patterns across the ground. Ethan, Carr, and Vesa arrived at the palace under the watchful eyes of the Tholian elite. Diplomats, military leaders, and key figures from across the galaxy were present, all waiting to see how this unprecedented union would unfold. As they entered the grand hall, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Ethan could feel the weight of their gazes, judging, calculating. The tension was palpable, but Carr and Vesa stood tall beside him, their presence a reminder that he was not alone. The ceremony began with a speech from the Tholian High Chancellor, a figure who commanded immense respect within the Tholian hierarchy. His voice echoed through the hall, a deep, resonant sound that seemed to reverberate through the crystal walls. He spoke of unity, of the potential for peace between their peoples, and the hope that this marriage symbolized a new era of cooperation. But as the Chancellor spoke, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. His mind kept drifting back to the whispers he had heard about Project Assimilation. He knew that not everyone in the room supported the peace treaty. There were factions within both the Tholian and human governments that believed in more aggressive approaches to intergalactic relations, factions that might be willing to sabotage the fragile alliance. As the Chancellor finished his speech, a sense of unease settled over the room. Ethan exchanged a glance with Carr and Vesa, both of whom seemed to sense the tension as well. They were all on high alert, knowing that this moment could be the turning point in their mission. After the formalities, the guests mingled, and Ethan found himself navigating a sea of political conversations. He was introduced to various Tholian dignitaries, all of whom seemed polite but distant. It was clear that many still saw him as an outsider, despite the union with Carr and Vesa. But Ethan remained determined to prove himself, to show that he was more than just a symbolic figurehead. Amidst the crowd, Ethan noticed a figure lingering at the edge of the room, a Tholian official who seemed out of place. The man's eyes were sharp, constantly scanning the room as if searching for something. Something about him didn't sit right with Ethan, and he decided to keep an eye on him. As the night wore on, Ethan found himself alone for a moment, standing near one of the massive crystal pillars that supported the palace. The air was cool, and the lights above cast a soft glow across the room. It was in that quiet moment that the figure from earlier approached him. "Ethan Hale," the man said, his voice low and urgent. "You need to listen carefully." Ethan tensed, ready for anything. "Who are you?" "My name isn't important," the man replied, glancing around nervously. "But what I have to tell you is, Project Assimilation. It's real. And it's much worse than you think." Ethan's heart raced. "What do you mean?" The man leaned in closer, his voice barely a whisper. "The Tholian military is planning to use the project to forcibly integrate humans into their society. It's not about peace. It's about control. They want to assimilate your people, turn them into something else." Ethan felt a cold chill run down his spine. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because not everyone agrees with the project," the man said, his eyes filled with fear. "There are those of us who believe in true cooperation, in a peaceful alliance. But we're being silenced. You need to be careful. Trust no one." Before Ethan could ask any more questions, the man slipped away into the crowd, leaving him with more questions than answers. Ethan didn't waste any time. After the event at the palace, he immediately sought out Carr and Vesa, pulling them aside into a private chamber within their quarters. "We have a problem," Ethan said, his voice urgent. He relayed everything the mysterious man had told him about Project Assimilation. Carr's expression darkened as she listened. "I've heard whispers of this project, but I never realized the extent of it." Vesa's eyes narrowed. "If what this man says is true, then we're in more danger than we thought. The Tholian military won't hesitate to act if they believe it will secure their power." Ethan nodded. "We need to find out more. We can't let this happen." Carr hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I have contacts within the government, people I trust. I can try to gather more information, but we must be careful. If anyone suspects we're investigating this, it could put all of us at risk." Vesa, ever the pragmatist, added, "And we'll need a plan for when we do find out the truth. If the Tholian military is involved, we can't fight them head-on. We'll need allies, both here and on Earth." The gravity of the situation was clear. The peace treaty, the Union, everything was at stake. If Project Assimilation was as dangerous as the man had claimed, then the entire galaxy could be on the brink of a new and terrifying conflict. In the days that followed, Ethan, Carr, and Vesa worked tirelessly behind the scenes. Carr used her diplomatic connections to quietly probe into the inner workings of the Tholian government, while Vesa reached out to her contacts in the military, hoping to find someone who could confirm the rumors. Meanwhile, Ethan made contact with human officials, trying to secure support in case things went south. The situation was delicate, and one wrong move could ignite the very war they were trying to prevent. It wasn't long before they uncovered the truth. Project Assimilation was real, and its scope was far more sinister than they had imagined. The Tholian military had developed technology that could rewrite the genetic code of humans, turning them into hybrid beings that would be subservient to the Tholians. It was a plan for domination, disguised as a path to unity. The discovery sent shockwaves through the group. They knew they had to act, but time was running out. The Tholian military was moving quickly, and if they didn't stop the project soon, it would be too late. With the help of their allies, Ethan, Kar, and Vesa devised a plan to sabotage Project Assimilation. It would be risky, potentially deadly, but it was their only chance to stop the impending disaster. On the night of the mission, the trio infiltrated the Tholian military facility where the project was being developed. It was a high-stakes operation, filled with danger at every turn. But together, they fought their way through the facility, disabling the project's core systems and preventing the assimilation process from ever being activated. As the facility crumbled around them, Ethan, Kar, and Vesa stood side by side, knowing that they had succeeded, at least for now. The threat of Project Assimilation had been neutralized, but their fight was far from over. They had exposed a dark truth within the Tholian government, and there would be consequences. But for the moment, they had won. And as they emerged from the facility, their bond stronger than ever. Ethan knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The events of the mission had far-reaching consequences. The Tholian government was forced to confront the corruption within its ranks, and the military's influence was diminished. The peace treaty remained intact, but it was clear that the road ahead would be difficult. Ethan, Kar, and Vesa had become more than just symbols of unity. They had become leaders in their own right. Together, they continued to work towards a future where both humans and Tholians could coexist peacefully, free from the shadow of domination and control. Their journey was far from over, but they faced it with renewed determination. The bonds they had forged in the face of adversity would carry them forward, guiding them through the challenges that lay ahead. And as the lavender skies of Axar Prime stretched out before them, Ethan knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, bound by love, trust, and the hope for a better tomorrow.